6 guests Johnny Carson hated so much they were banned for life. For 3 decades, Johnny Carson reigned as the undisputed king of late-night television. With that million-dollar smile and effortless charm, he became America's midnight companion, a man the nation trusted to make them laugh and feel at ease. But behind the twinkle in his eye was a very different Johnny Carson, cold, calculating, and merciless to those who crossed him. Johnny never forgot and he never forgave, recalled a longtime Tonight Show producer. And when you were out for good. No warning. No second chances. You weren't just scratched from that evening's guest list. You were banished from the kingdom of late night forever. He was the quiet executioner of careers. A man from Nebraska who ruled like a Sicilian don, never shouting, never making a public scene, simply erasing people from his life as if they never existed. And because of his unrivaled power in the industry, that silent exile often meant more than losing a booking. It could mean losing your future. What's most shocking is how small the missteps could be. Some guests earned their exile with outrageous, headline-making behavior. Others committed sins so minor, they didn't even realize their fate until the invitations stopped coming. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on 6 stars who made the fatal mistake of crossing Johnny Carson and paid the ultimate price. These are the careers Johnny erased, the names he struck from the stage forever. Number 1. Charles Grodin. When confrontational comedy went too far. On paper, Charles Grodin seemed like the perfect Tonight Show guest. Sharp, quick-witted, and armed with the same dry, sardonic humor Johnny Carson himself adored. But what began as a clever twist on the typical celebrity interview slowly morphed into something darker, something that pushed Carson past his limit. Grodin's first Tonight Show appearance came in the mid-1970s, when he was promoting his breakout role in The Heartbreak Kid. Unlike most guests who showed up ready with polished anecdotes, Grodin leaned into an act, playing a difficult, combative version of himself. He challenged Carson's questions, acted dismissive, even hostile. The first time he pulled it off, Johnny rolled with it brilliantly. Carson was a master of improvisation, recalled one writer. He knew Grodin was manufacturing tension, and the audience ate it up. That first spark of success led to multiple return visits, each more confrontational than the last. Grodin began openly mocking Carson's interviewing skills, accusing him of not reading his books, even suggesting Johnny didn't care about his guests at all. To insiders, it was clearly performance. But to viewers at home, it looked like a genuine train wreck, a guest clashing with the king of late night on live television. The line between comedy and reality blurred dangerously. The breaking point came in 1990. During one appearance, Grodin crossed into Carson's most sensitive territory. He began mocking Johnny's delivery and questioning whether his warmth on air was real, or just an act for the paycheck. Johnny's smile got very tight, remembered a camera operator. And everyone on staff knew the difference between his real smile and the one that meant he was furious. Grodin had struck a nerve. Carson, a man who struggled with intimacy and carried the scars of 4 failed marriages, hated any suggestion that his charm was fake. Johnny played along until the commercial break. Then he turned to his producer and muttered just 4 words, "We're done with that." Grodin was never officially banned. He was simply never invited back. His publicists were told the show was going in a different direction, or the schedule was full. In truth, Johnny had made his decision. Why keep booking a guest who left him feeling humiliated, even if it was just an act? Years later, Grodin admitted his performance may have gone too far. "I thought I was doing Andy Kaufman," he confessed. But Johnny didn't find it funny. That unspoken ban revealed something vital about Carson. He could laugh at himself. He could tolerate ribbing. But the moment a guest chipped away at his authority, or questioned the authenticity of the persona he'd built over decades, the curtain closed for good. Number 2. Shelley Winters, the drink-throwing incident that ended it all. Shelley Winters wasn't just an actress. She was Hollywood royalty. A 2-time Oscar winner with unforgettable performances in A Place in the Sun, The Diary of Anne Frank, and The Poseidon Adventure. Her talent was beyond question. But by the 1970s, Shelley's name carried another reputation: brilliance wrapped in volatility. She could charm the room 1 minute and explode the next, recalled one director. And if she'd been drinking, which she often had by then, the odds of an explosion skyrocketed. Johnny Carson had hosted Winters many times before. She was a natural storyteller, her larger-than-life personality perfect for late-night TV. But behind the curtain, the Tonight Show staff grew anxious each time she was booked. Which Shelley would show up? A talent coordinator admitted. The witty star or the ticking time bomb? The night of her 1975 appearance answered that question in the worst way possible. From the moment she walked on stage, it was clear something was off. Her words slurred, her thoughts wandered, and Johnny, always the master juggler, tried desperately to keep the interview afloat. But Shelley kept cutting him off, jumping subjects mid-sentence, her comments making less and less sense. Then came the breaking point. Carson cracked a light-hearted joke about her weight, something she herself had poked fun at many times before. But this time, Shelley's demeanor flipped like a switch. She just snapped, remembered a stagehand. 1 second she was laughing, the next she hurled her entire glass of whiskey, ice and all, right in Johnny's face. The audience gasped. Carson, dripping wet but composed, quickly cut to commercial. But when the cameras went dark, the mask slipped. His expression was murderous, said a producer. I'd never seen Johnny that angry. Without a word, he stormed off stage to change his suit while Shelley was quietly escorted out of the building. The fallout was immediate and final. Carson decreed she was never to return. For him, it wasn't just about the whiskey, it was about trust. There's an unspoken contract between host and guest, explained a producer. Mutual respect. Shelley broke that contract in front of millions. The ban crushed her career. By then, roles were already scarce due to her age and her reputation for being difficult. Losing The Tonight Show meant losing the single most important platform for staying visible to mainstream America. Her days of commanding the spotlight were essentially over, one Hollywood agent admitted. Years later, Shelley herself would reflect on the incident with surprising honesty. I was in a bad place then. Johnny had every right to never want to see me again. It became one of the most infamous examples of Carson's zero-tolerance policy. Flubbed lines, scandals, even backstage chaos could be forgiven. But physical aggression toward the host himself? That was the one line you never crossed. And Shelley Winters, tragically, crossed it in the most unforgettable way. Number 3. Rich Little, the vanishing act of Carson's favorite impressionist. For over a decade, master impressionist Rich Little was one of Johnny Carson's most beloved and dependable guests. Between the 1960s and 1970s, he appeared on The Tonight Show more than 30 times, dazzling audiences with uncanny imitations of Hollywood stars and political figures. He seemed like one of Carson's chosen regulars, until suddenly, he was gone. No fiery blow-up. No awkward on-air moment. Just silence. Overnight, Rich Little disappeared from Carson's stage, creating one of the most puzzling mysteries in the show's history. Unlike other bands, this one was quiet, almost invisible. There wasn't a single moment anyone could point to. A talent booker from that era recalled, he just gradually became persona non grata, and nobody really knew why. Little's career kept thriving elsewhere, other shows, live tours, TV specials, but The Tonight Show door stayed permanently shut. Even Rich himself admitted years later, I kept waiting for the call, and it just never came. Eventually, I got the message, but Johnny never told me why. Behind the scenes, however, the reasons began to surface. Carson, insiders revealed, found Little exhausting off-camera. While audiences loved 10 minutes of non-stop impressions, Johnny had to endure them during rehearsals, breaks, and meetings. A producer recalled Carson muttering in frustration, "Does he even have his own voice?" after yet another relentless string of impressions. The irritation was real. But the real deal-breaker came when Carson caught on to something most viewers never noticed: repetition. Little, appearing so often, began recycling old bits with only minor tweaks. To Carson, who had a razor-sharp memory for comedy, that was unforgivable. He demanded freshness and originality every single time. And when he believed Little was coasting, Carson quietly pulled the plug. No confrontation. Just a soft ban. Booking calls stopped, excuses were made, and Rich Little was never invited back. For Carson, it wasn't just about laughs, it was about standards. Johnny didn't just care about ratings, one NBC executive explained. He cared about quality. If he thought you were phoning it in, that was almost worse to him than bad behavior. Years later, Rich Little finally learned the truth. Carson thought he was recycling material and wearing out his welcome. Reflecting on it in 2019, Little admitted with regret, "If I'd known that was the issue, I could have created all new impressions. But in this business, doors don't close with explanations. They just close." And with that, Rich Little's once-open invitation to Carson's stage was sealed forever. Number 4. Truman Capote. The incoherent appearance that ended it all. Truman Capote was once hailed as one of America's greatest literary minds, the genius behind Breakfast at Tiffany's and In Cold Blood. His wit, charm, and razor-sharp tongue made him a talk show darling throughout the 1960s and early 1970s. But by the time he stepped onto the Tonight Show stage in 1975, Capote was no longer the brilliant star audiences remembered. He was a man in the grip of a devastating spiral of alcohol and drug addiction, and that night, it all came crashing down. "You could tell something was wrong the moment he walked out," recalled a stage manager. Truman was unsteady on his feet, his speech slurred, his eyes unfocused. Johnny Carson's concern was visible before Capote even sat down. Carson, a man who enjoyed his own drinks off camera, had one unbreakable rule for his show. Guests could never appear drunk or incoherent before a national audience. Viewers invited him into their homes each night, and he took that responsibility seriously. From the start, the interview was a disaster. Capote struggled to form complete sentences, losing his train of thought mid-word. Worse, he blurted out several crude remarks about fellow celebrities, things that could never make it to air. "Johnny tried everything," remembered a director. He asked simple questions, steered Truman towards safe topics, even attempted to spin the chaos into comedy. Nothing worked. The breaking point came when Capote launched into a rambling, explicit story about a Hollywood party. Carson immediately cut him off and threw to a commercial break, earlier than scheduled. Behind the scenes, witnesses recalled Johnny leaning in and quietly telling him, "Truman, you're not well tonight. We're going to cut this short." Capote slurred a protest, but the damage was done. When the cameras came back, Carson wrapped the segment in under 4 minutes, a record-short interview for the show. The fallout was immediate. Johnny personally ordered that Capote was never to be invited back. The ban lasted the rest of Capote's career. For an author already struggling with declining output, the loss was catastrophic. The Tonight Show was the platform to sell books. Without it, his later works, like Music for Chameleons, suffered from lack of exposure. Sales dwindled. Capote's once brilliant career dimmed further into tragedy. The incident also underscored Carson's strict line on substance abuse. He wasn't condemning Truman's demons, he was protecting the show's integrity. As one friend put it, there's a difference between having a few drinks before going on and being completely incoherent on national television. Capote's disastrous appearance became a cautionary tale for every celebrity who thought about using liquid courage before stepping onto Carson's stage. The message was brutal but clear: show up impaired, and it would be your last time in America's living room. Number 5. The Smothers Brothers, political firebrands exiled from Carson's stage. Tom and Dick Smothers weren't just comedians. They were cultural flashpoints, daring satirists who turned their CBS variety show into a platform for razor-sharp political commentary and bold opposition to the Vietnam War. To the counterculture, they were heroes. To the establishment, they were dangerous agitators. Johnny Carson admired their talent and hosted them several times throughout the 1960s. But unlike the brothers, Johnny guarded his political neutrality like a fortress. His comedy gently poked fun at both parties, but he refused to let The Tonight Show become a partisan battlefield. The Smothers Brothers saw their comedy as a weapon for change. Carson saw his as a nightly escape from America's divisions. The breaking point came in 1970. During a scheduled appearance, Tom Smothers veered off script, using his segment to deliver what sounded more like an anti-war speech than light-hearted banter. A camera operator remembered Carson's face shifting instantly. The smile stayed, but the eyes turned icy. Johnny despised being ambushed with political grandstanding, especially when it ignored the pre-show agreements. He finished the segment with professional calm, but backstage he was furious. "Too much trouble for what we get," he muttered to his producer, a phrase that soon became code for guests who crossed his invisible line. The brothers weren't formally banned, but they quietly slipped into what staff called Carson Purgatory. Their names were never erased from the booking sheets, yet every time they were suggested, there was suddenly a scheduling conflict or a reason it wasn't the right week. Over time, Their managers stopped calling. When they did appear, it was rare, and always under strict conditions. No political material, no heavy statements, just songs and harmless jokes. As Tommy Smothers later admitted, we were effectively censored. The moment we tried to say something meaningful, the invitations dried up again. What made this soft blacklisting so revealing was what it said about Carson himself. Unlike Dick Cavett and other hosts who embraced political discourse, Johnny believed his audience tuned in for laughter, not lectures. He wasn't disagreeing with the Smothers' politics, noted one NBC executive. He just rejected their attempt to turn his entertainment platform into a political pulpit. For Carson, The Tonight Show was first and foremost about show business, not activism. And if guests couldn't separate comedy from politics, they eventually found themselves shut out of the most powerful stage in late-night television. Number 6. Morton Downey Jr., the combative host who pushed too far. Morton Downey Jr. was everything Johnny Carson was not: loud, abrasive, deliberately provocative, and unapologetically political. In the late 1980s, his syndicated talk show became infamous for its chaos. Downey would scream at guests, blow cigarette smoke in their faces, and rile up audiences into near riots. Where Carson prized civility and wit, Downey thrived on confrontation and spectacle. Their clashing styles came to a head during Downey's ill-fated appearance on The Tonight Show, a night many crew members still recall as one of the most uncomfortable of Carson's career. From the start, it was oil and water. Carson represented old-school elegance and restraint, while Downey embodied the rising wave of shock television. Even booking him was controversial. Some on Carson's staff argued that giving Downey airtime legitimized a brand of broadcasting that was beneath the show's standards. Johnny reluctantly agreed, believing he owed audiences a look at this new phenomenon. But the moment Downey walked on stage, he knew it was a mistake. Instead of taking his seat like every other guest, Downey prowled the stage, playing to the crowd as if it were his show. Carson's face turned to stone. Those who knew him well spotted the subtle warning signs: the tightened eyes, the clenched jaw, the icy stare. Downey, oblivious, charged ahead. He interrupted Carson's questions, shouted over him, and addressed the audience directly. Carson tried humor, direct questioning, even gentle challenges, but nothing broke through Downey's aggressive act. The breaking point came when Downey started tearing into other talk show hosts, mocking them for lacking the courage to tackle issues as he did. The jab at Carson was unmistakable. Johnny smiled politely, but his eyes went cold. He leaned back in his chair, a quiet signal to the crew that he was finished. Moments later, he wrapped the interview early, thanking Downey with icy formality. Backstage, Carson didn't hold back. "That's not television," he told his producer. "That's a circus. And this isn't the big top." Downey was never invited back. No official ban was announced, but his name quietly disappeared from booking lists. For Carson, the issue went deeper than personal dislike. Downey symbolized a shift in television, from conversation to confrontation, from wit to sheer volume. Critics later called him the canary in the coal mine, a warning that the thoughtful, measured style Carson embodied was giving way to something louder, meaner, and more divisive. In refusing to welcome Downey again, Johnny wasn't just rejecting a guest. He was making a statement about the kind of television he believed in, and the standards he fought to uphold until his final broadcast.